The Qodesh is here. The Qodesh is us. This is where God dwells now. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Blessed is his name and his glorious kingdom for all eternity. And you shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I command you today are to be on your hearts. You are to teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign on your hands. They are to be frontlets between your eyes, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The entire Torah and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
Good morning. It's great to see you. Up and down, singing "Blessed Be Our God." Here we go. Easy words. Oh, 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 oh.
reading start at Numbers chapter 16. The Haftarah is 1 Samuel chapters 11 is in the Haftarah readings are Matthew, and Timothy, and Jude. Okay, so let's do the Torah readings. The rebellion of Korah. And Korah, son of Yisrael, son of Kohath, son of Levi, took both Dathan and Abiram, the son of Eliab, and On, son of Peleth, sons of Reuben. And they rose up before Moshe with some of the children of Yisrael, 250 leaders of the congregation, called ones of the meeting, men of name. And they assembled against Moshe and against Aaron, and said to them, Enough of you! For all the congregation is set apart, all of them, and Yahweh is in their midst. Why then do you lift up yourselves above the assembly of Yahweh? And when Moshe heard this, he fell on his face and spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, Tomorrow morning Yahweh shall make known who is his and who is set apart, and bring him near to him. And let him bring near to him the one whom he chooses. Now do this. Take fire holders, Korah and all your company, and put fire in them, and put incense in them before Yahweh tomorrow. And it shall be that the one whom Yahweh chooses is the set apart one. Enough of you, sons of Levi. And Moshe said to Korah, Hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it little to you that Elohim of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to perform the service of the dwelling place of Yahweh, and to stand before the congregation to serve them? And that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you, yet you still seek the priesthood as well? Therefore, you and all your company are set against Yahweh. And Aaron, what is he that you grumble against him? And Moshe sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, but they said, We are not coming up. Is it little that you have brought us up out of the land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to kill us in the wilderness, that you will also see total rule over us? Also, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you bore out the eyes of these men? We are not coming up. And Moshe became very displeased and said to Yahweh, Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, nor have I done any harm to any of them. Then Moshe said to Korah, Tomorrow you and all your company shall be there before Yahweh, you and they and Aaron. And take each one his fire holder, and you shall put incense in it, and let each one bring his fire holder before Yahweh, 250 holders, and you and Aaron, each one with his fire holder.
Shabbat Shalom. So each man took his censer, put fire and incense into it, and stood with Moses and Aaron at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Korah and all his following had assembled in the opposition to them at the entrance of the tent of meeting, then the glory of Adonai appeared to the entire assembly. Then Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Separate yourselves from among this assembly, so that I may consume them at once. But they fell on their faces and cried out, O God, God of the spirits of all flesh, if one man sins, will you be angry with the entire community? Then Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the assembly, saying, Move away from the dwelling of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Moses got up and went to Dathan and Abiram. The elders of Israel followed after him. He warned the assembly, saying, Move away from the tents of these wicked men. Don't touch anything that is theirs, or you will be swept away because of all their sins." So they moved away from near the dwelling of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Dathan and Abiram came outside and were standing at the entrance of their tents with their wives, their children, and their little ones. Moses said, "By this you will know that Adonai has sent me to do all these works, that they are not from my own heart. If every one of these men die a common death and experience what happens to all people, then Adonai has not sent me. But if Adonai brings about a new thing, and the earth opens her mouth and swallows them, and everything that is theirs, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you will know that these men have despised Adonai." As soon as he finished saying these things, the ground split under them. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them, along with all their households, all of Korah's people, and all their possessions. They went down alive into Sheol, they and everything that was theirs. The earth closed over them, and they were gone from among the community. All Israel around them fled at their outcry, for they shouted, "Perhaps the earth will swallow us." Fire also came out from Adonai and consumed the 250 men offering the incense. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell Eleazar, son of Aaron the Kohen, to take the censers from the burning, because they are holy, and scatter the coals at a distance." Sorry, we've gone a bit fast.
It's all right, we're just enjoying reading and enjoying listening. Shabbat shalom, everyone. As for the senses of these men who sinned at the cost of their lives, let them be taken and hammered into sheets as a covering for the altar. For they were presented before Adonai, so they are holy. They are to be assigned to Bnei Yisrael. So Eleazar the Kohen collected the bronze censers brought by the ones who were burned and hammered them into an overlay for the altar, just as Adonai had spoken to him by Moshe's hand, so that it would be as a reminder to Bnei Yisrael that no one who was not a descendant of Aaron should burn incense before Adonai, and so no one would become like Korah and his following. The next day, the entire community of Bnei Yisrael grumbled against Moshe and Aaron, saying, "You killed Adonai's people." But when they gathered in opposition to Moshe and Aaron and turned toward the tent of meeting, behold, the cloud covered it and the glory appeared. Moses and Aaron went to the front of the tent of meeting. Adonai spoke to Moshe, saying, "Get away from among this assembly, so that I may immediately consume them." So they fell on their faces. Then Moshe said to Aaron, "Take the censer, put into it fire from the altar, and put in incense. Get going and hurry to the assembly and make atonement for them, because wrath has come out from Adonai, and the plague has started." Aaron did just as Moshe had said, and ran into the middle of the assembly. Behold, the plague had already started among the people, but he offered the incense and made atonement for the people. He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague stopped. However, there were 14,700 dead from the plague, besides those who died because of Korah. Then Aaron returned to Moshe at the entrance of the tent of meeting, when the plague had been halted.
Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel and get a rod from each ancestral house, 12 staffs in all, from each prince according to his ancestral household. Write each man's name on his staff. Write Aaron's name on Levi's staff, and there is to be one staff for the prince of each tribe. Then you are to place them in the tent of meeting before the testimony where I meet with you. It will come about that the staff of the man I choose will sprout. I will then rid myself of the grumblings of Bnei Israel who are grumbling against you. So Moses spoke to Bnei Israel. Each of their princes gave him a staff, one staff for each prince according to their ancestral houses, 12 staffs in all, and Aaron's staff was among them. Moses placed the staffs before Adonai in the tent of testimony. The next day, Moses entered the tent of testimony, and behold, Aaron's staff from the house of Levi had sprouted, blossomed, and produced almonds. Moses then brought all the staffs from Adonai's presence to all Bnei Israel. They looked, and each man took his staff. Adonai said to Moses, "Put Aaron's staff back in front of the testimony to keep it as a sign to the sons of rebellion, so that it may put an end to their grumblings against me, and so they will not die." Moses did just as Adonai commanded him. But Bnei Israel said to Moses, saying, "Look, we will die. We are all lost. We are lost. Anyone approaching the tabernacle of Adonai will die. Must all of us die?"
Adonai said to Aaron, "You, your sons, and the house of your father with you will bear the guilt for the sanctuary, and you and your sons will bear the guilt for your priesthood. Bring with you your brothers, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, so that they may join you and assist you, both you and your sons with you, before the tent of testimony. They are to perform their duties for you and for all matters related to the tent. They must not approach the implements of the sanctuary or the altar, otherwise both you and they will die. They are to team with you and attend to the tent of meeting for all the service of the tent, but no unauthorized person may intrude upon you. So you are to attend to the sanctuary and care of the altar, so no further wrath will fall on Bnei Israel. See, I have personally taken your kinsmen, the Levites, from among Bnei Israel as a gift for you and your sons with you, dedicated to Adonai to serve in the work of the tent of meeting. But you and your sons with you are to maintain your priesthood for everything pertaining to the altar and inside the parochet. I am giving you the ministry of the priesthood as a gift. Anyone unauthorized who approaches will die." Adonai then said to Aaron, "See, I have given you charge over all my offerings. All the sacred things from Bnei Israel I have given to you as set aside for you and your sons as a permanent share. You are to have a part of the most holy things that is kept from the fire, whether grain, sin, or guilt offerings that they bring to me as most holy. They are for you and your sons. You are to eat it as most holy. Every male may eat it. It is set apart for you. This is also yours, the gift of the wave offerings of Bnei Israel. I have given all the wave offerings as a permanent share to you, your sons, and your daughters. Everyone who is clean in your house may eat it. All the finest olive oil, the finest new wine and grain, they give to Adonai from their first fruits. I have given them to you. All the first fruits of the land that they bring to Adonai will be for yours. Anyone who is clean in your house may eat it. Every devoted thing in Israel is yours. The first offspring of the womb from all flesh, whether human or animal, offered to Adonai, is yours. However, you are to redeem the firstborn of a man and the firstborn of unclean animals. And when they are a month old, you are to redeem them at the redemption price of 5 shekels of silver by the sanctuary shekel, or 20 gerahs. But the firstborn of the ox, the sheep, or the goat, you are not to redeem. They are holy. You are to sprinkle their blood on the altar, and their fat you are to burn as a fire offering, a pleasing aroma to Adonai.
And the flesh of them shall be thine, as the waved breast and the right shoulder are thine. All the heave offerings of the holy things, which the children of Israel offer unto the Lord, have I given thee, and thy sons and thy daughters with thee. By a statute forever, it is a covenant of salt, forever before the Lord, unto thee, and to thy seed with thee. And the Lord spake unto Aaron, Thou shalt have no inheritance in their land, neither shalt thou have any part among them. I am thy part, and thine inheritance among the children of Israel. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the 10th in Israel for an inheritance, for their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle of the congregation, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levite shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel they have no inheritance. But the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer, and a heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, When you take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then you shall offer up a heave offering for it, for the Lord, even a 10th part of the tithe. And this your heave offering shall be reckoned unto you, as though it were the corn of the threshing floor, that's grain, and in the fullness of the winepress. Thus you shall also offer a heave offering unto the Lord all your tithes, which ye receive of the children of Israel, and you shall give thereof the Lord's heave offering to Aaron the priest. Out of all your gifts you shall offer every heave offering of the Lord, of all the best thereof, even the hallowed part thereof, out of it. Therefore thou shalt say unto them, When you have heaved the best thereof from it, then it shall be counted unto the Levites as the increase of the threshing floor, and as the increase of the winepress. And you shall eat it in every place, you and your households, for it is your reward for the service in the tabernacle of the congregation. And you shall bear no sin by reason of it, when you have heaved from it the best of it, neither shall you pollute the holy things of the children of Israel, lest you die.
And Samuel said to the people, Come, let's go to Gilgal and reaffirm the kingdom there. So all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before Adonai in Gilgal. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before Adonai, and there Saul and all the men of Israel greatly rejoiced. Then Samuel said to all Israel, Behold, I have listened to your voice and all you said to me, and have set a king over you. Now here is the king who will go before you while I am old and gray. Also here are my sons with you. I have gone before you from my youth. To this day, here I am, witness against me before Adonai and before his anointed. Whose ox I have taken, or whose donkey have I taken? Whom have I defrauded, or whom have I oppressed? From whose hand have I taken a bribe to look the other way? I will restore it to you. They replied, you haven't defrauded us, or oppressed us, or taken anything from anyone's hand. Then he said to them, Adonai is then a witness against you, and his anointed is a witness to this day, that you have not found anything in my hand. He is a witness, they replied. Then Samuel said to the people, it is Adonai who appointed Moshe and Aaron, and who brought your fathers up from the land of Egypt. So now stand still, so that I may plead with you before Adonai concerning all the righteous acts of Adonai, which he did for you and your fathers. When Yaakov entered Egypt, and your fathers cried out to Adonai, then Adonai sent Moshe and Aaron, who brought your fathers out of Egypt and settled them in this place. But they forgot Adonai their God. So he gave them over into the hand of Sisera, captain of the army of Hasor, into the hand of the Philistines, and into the hand of the king of Moab, who fought against them. So they cried out to Adonai and said, we have sinned because we have forsaken Adonai and have worshipped the Baalim and Ashtaroth. But now deliver us from the hand of our enemies, and we will worship you. Then Adonai sent Yerubbabel, Berdan, Jephthah, and Samuel, and delivered you from the hand of your enemies and every side, so that you might live securely. But when you saw Nahash, king of the Ammonites, marching against you, you said to me, no, but a king must reign over us, even though Adonai your God is your king. Now therefore, here is the king whom you have chosen, whom you have asked for, and behold, Adonai has set him as a king over you. If you fear Adonai and worship him and listen to his voice, and do not rebel against the command of Adonai, then both you as well as the king who reigns over you will be following Adonai your God. But if you do not listen to the voice of Adonai and rebel against the command of Adonai, then the hand of Adonai will be against you and against your fathers. Now stand by and see this great thing that Adonai will do before your eyes. Is it not wheat harvest season today? I will call to Adonai that he may send thunder and rain. Then you will know and see that your wickedness is great, which you have done in the sight of Adonai by asking for yourselves a king. So Samuel prayed to Adonai, and Adonai sent thunder and rain that day. Then all the people greatly feared Adonai and Samuel. And all the people said to Samuel, please pray for your servants to Adonai your God, that we would not die. For we have added to all our sins this evil by asking for ourselves a king. Samuel said to the people, fear not. Indeed, you have done all this evil. Yet do not turn aside from following Adonai, but worship Adonai with all of your heart. Do not turn aside to go after empty things that cannot profit or deliver, for they are futile. For Adonai will not forsake his people, for his great name's sake, because it has pleased Adonai to make you a people to himself.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody in the family who's been praying about my circumstances, because your prayers have been answered, and I truly thank you all. As you know, it's been quite a stretching time for me, in that the house that I lived in at Papama was sold due to the COVID effect, that there was no income for over a year. And so I had to vacate the premises and pack my bags, and lovely Christine said, well, come and live with me. So I moved up there. I've spent the last, I would say, at least 4 months with her. In that time, every door seemed to shut. It didn't matter where I went, whether it was from Korah, Rotorua, Te Puke, Morrinsville, right the way through Katikati, no door would open for me because I had very limited funds. Then one day, I went round to a retirement village to see a lady, to see if I could put my name down. When I got there, the elderly people, and I call them elderly, no rudeness there, because I'm one, they were trying to do some exercises and an ambulance had arrived, and so the lady was very busy looking after the patient. And so I clued up with them all in the lounge doing exercises for about an hour, and they thought I was the neatest thing that had ever come into this village. So they put in a very good word. They said, there's a lovely lady, she's really nice. So anyway, I had to leave because this lady couldn't see me, and I went back about 2 weeks later, put my name down and had a good chat to her. And 2 weeks later, she rang me and she said, would you come and see me? So I did. I was offered a lovely unit in there. The prices had all gone up. The body court fee was $809 a month. And darling Joel helped me work out my finances, only to find that there was no way I could possibly live there because I'd vegetate. I wouldn't be able to live. So that door closed. And then a miracle happened. I went to visit a friend for a cuppa, and she marched me up to the office and she said, this lady has put her name down and nothing has happened. And the lady in the office said, well, of course it hasn't. Nobody's vacated their premises. There just isn't anything. So this was a new lady, and she said, well, there is a tiny bedsit. So we walked down, we had a look, and it was literally one room. You slept in it, you ate in it, you lived in it. Everything was just this tiny little room. And it had a toilet, a shower, and the laundry, and a bench for a kitchen. And it was 180,000. And I thought, well, Lord, is this what you're telling me, that I'm meant to come in here? So I said to the lady, I'll take it on the understanding that if anything bigger comes along, I get first right. So I went and saw a lawyer, got it all set up, all the papers, and the time came for me to pack my gear, and I got a phone call. And it was the office to say, would I come down and see them, in a very abrupt tone. And I thought, I'm in trouble, what's wrong? So when I arrived, she said, I want to show you something. So I thought, oh dear, there's the paperwork's wrong, something's wrong. So I said, look, I've got all the paperwork in my hand, everything's fine. No, she said, I don't want to talk about that. And marched me across the road, put the key in the door, opened it, and she said, what do you think of this? And I knew my Lord had opened this door for me. It is a 2-bedroom little unit. It's been painted, recarpeted. The body court fee is only $433 a month. I've just got enough money, so he's provided everything for me to be able to go in there. And I'm just overawed at God's goodness. Yes. So thank you.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah, it's always good to hear good family news. Yes. And
she deserves a chocolate.
To encourage her. No, only when she moves in. It's a bit like a roof shot. We haven't had any new houses built, is it? Not yet, anyway. Well, wonderful. So, just look at the time there. Let's just continue on with the readings with Brother Hannah Shah. Yeah, it's good. And if you have any other testimonies, that sort of, just let us know, and we'll chat about it. And it's always good to encourage each other, isn't it? Things that God is doing, and seeing things change and happen. Because often we think, oh, it's only someone else that always gets the blessings or things happen to. But and it doesn't even have to be a big thing. I just would encourage you, just recognize the things that God actually does in your lives on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's really good to share them and how He is actually strengthening you, blessing you.
Shalom, everyone.
Got the earbox?
Yes.
Ooh, excellent. That's neat, isn't it? Ah.
So when he entered the temple, the ruling Kohanim and the elders of the people came to him while he was teaching, saying, "By what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you this authority?" Yeshua replied to them, "I also will ask you one question. If you tell me, I likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things." John's emotions. Where was it from? From heaven or from men? They began to dialogue among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, then why didn't you believe him? But if we say from men, we fear the crowd, for all hold up John as a prophet." So answering Yeshua, they said, "We don't know." Then he said to them, "Neither am I telling you by what authority I do these things."
Second Timothy chapter 2, starting at verse 15. Make every effort to present yourself before God as tried and true, as an unashamed worker cutting a straight path with the word of truth. But avoid godless chatter, for it will lead to further ungodliness. And their words will spread like cancer. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus, men who have missed the mark concerning the truth, saying that the resurrection has already taken place. They are overturning the faith of some. Nevertheless, the firm foundation of God stands, having this seal: the Lord knows those who are his, and let everyone who names the name of the Lord keep away from unrighteousness. Now in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honor and some for common use. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from these, he will be a vessel of honor, sanctified, useful to the master, prepared for every good work. Now flee from youthful desire. Instead, pursue righteousness, faithfulness, love, and shalom with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. But avoid foolish and ignorant disputes, knowing that they produce quarrels. The Lord's slave must not be quarrelsome, but be kind to all, able to teach, tolerant. Let him give guidance with humility to those who are in opposition. Perhaps God may grant them a change of mind, leading to the knowledge of truth. Then they may regain their senses and escape the devil's snare, in which they had been held captive by him to do his will. But understand this, that in the last days hard times will come, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, hard-headed, unforgiving, backbiting, without self-control, brutal, hating what is good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to an outward form of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid these people, for among these are those who slip into households and deceive weak women weighed down with sins, led away by various desires, always learning, yet never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Just as James and Jambres opposed Moses, so do these people oppose the truth, men corrupted in mind and worthless concerning the faith. But these people will not make any more progress, for their folly, like that of James and Jambres, will be obvious to everyone. You, however, closely followed my teaching, manner of life, purpose, faithfulness, patience, love, perseverance.
Shabbat Shalom. I would love to thank the worship team, Sharon, and your worship team. It was just so anointed and so special. So thank you for that. And I'm sure I say that on behalf of everyone. Yes. This is from Jude. For certain individuals, the ones written about long ago as being meant for this condemnation have wormed their way in. Ungodly people who pervert God's grace into a license for debauchery and disown our only Master and Lord, Yeshua the Messiah. Since you already know all of this, my purpose is only to remind you that Adonai, who once delivered the people from Egypt, later destroyed those who did not trust. And the angels that did not keep within their original authority but abandoned their proper sphere, he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for the judgment day of the great day. And Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, following a pattern like theirs, committing sexual sins and perversions, lie exposed as a warning of the everlasting fire awaiting those who must undergo punishment. Likewise, these people, with their visions, defile their own flesh, despise godly authority, and insult angelic beings. When Michael, one of the ruling angels, took issue with the adversary, arguing over the body of Moshe, he did not dare bring against him an insulting charge, but said, "May Adonai rebuke you." However, these people insult anything they don't understand, and what they do understand naturally, without thinking, like animals. By these things they are destroyed. Woe to them, in that they have walked the road of Cain. They have given themselves over for money to the error of Balaam. They have been destroyed in the rebellion of Korah. These men are filthy spots at your festive gatherings, meant to foster love. They share your meals without a qualm, while caring only for themselves. They are waterless clouds carried along by the winds, trees without fruit, even in autumn, and doubly dead because they have been uprooted. Savage sea waves heaving forth their shameful deeds like foam, wandering stars, for whom the blackest darkness has been reserved forever. Moreover, Hanoch, which I think is Enoch, in the seventh generation, starting with Adam, also prophesied about these men, saying, "Look, Adonai came with his myriads of holy ones to execute judgment against everyone, that is, to convict all the godless for their godless deeds, which they have done in such a godless way, and for all the harsh words these godless sinners have spoken against him. These people are grumblers and complainers. They follow their evil passions, their mouths speak grandiosities, and they flatter others to gain advantage. But you, dear friends, keep in mind the words spoken in advance by the emissaries of our Lord Yeshua, the Messiah. They told you during the Acharit Hamayim, which I gather is the end of days, there will be scoffers following their own godless passions. These are the people who cause divisions. They are controlled by their impulses because they don't have the Spirit. But you, dear friends, build yourselves up in your most holy faith and pray in union with the Ruach HaKodesh. Thus keep yourselves in God's love as you wait for our Lord Yeshua the Messiah to give you the mercy that leads to eternal life. Rebuke some who are disputing, save others, snatching them out of the fire, and to yet others show mercy, but with fear, hating even the clothes stained by their vices. Now to the one who can keep you from falling and set you without defect and full of joy in the presence of his Shekinah, to God alone, our deliverer, through Yeshua the Messiah, our Lord, be all glory, majesty, power, and authority before all time, now and forever. Amen.
Wow, that's excellent. We've now had the benediction. I won't sing it to you. I think I've sung it before. Yeah, it's actually I really enjoy reading in Jude all the time. It's gives all the warnings, it gives all the things to look out for, and then he gives the answer at the end, doesn't he? Instead of looking to them, keep your eyes on Most High. He even tells you that don't worry about all the demons that are supposed to be floating around, because actually most of them are still locked up in hell. You understand that? Read this? You don't have to worry about them, because most of them are always from the beginning. There's only a few that have actually been let loose with the adversary himself. All the rest are locked up in hell. And they have so when they fell. So don't worry. Don't worry, be happy. You've got the upper hand. The upper hand. That's great. Beautiful. Well, last week's parasha was about Caliph and Yehoshua from Ephraim. Caliph was from Judah. They stood up against what? Popular opinion. That's what I'm encouraging each one here to do so too. Stand up against just the popular opinion. Which will generally pull you down. They were rewarded with being only 2 of the original 12, and all of those who are over 20 years. Approximately 2.5 million people who had the privilege of actually entering the land. So there's approximately 1 million died in the wilderness. That's bouncing around this up for some reason. Echoing, not sure why. Was it God's original intention that the spies be sent into the land to recontour it? Was it? No. No, what did he say to them? Go in and? No, go in and take it. Wasn't any intention originally to have spies to go in. but there are chickens. Like most of us at times. And because they have a lack of trust. And Yehuda in Jude talks about that. It says, maintain your trust. Don't let your trust be taken from you. Don't lose it. Faith, trust is essential for life. Fear is a horrible thing with dire consequences. Faith overcomes fear. Be people of faith. Salvation also came to Rahab and her household because they chose to trust. That was the second time when the spies went. And life's about choices, isn't it? With consequences. And it's important that we make good ones because the decisions seldom just affect us. They seldom affect just the people who make those decisions. And this is the kind of faith that pleases God. Without it, it's impossible to please him. It says in Tehillim 19:14, may these words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer.
Yes.
Also, in last week's parashah, the Torah portion, Shalach Lacha, the seeds of rebellion were sown as the Israelites threatened to replace Moshe as the leader. Wow. There's plenty of that going on around the world these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they can lead better than someone else. And maybe they can. But generally what it says, wait till you are promoted by God. But most of us kind of get a bit impatient, don't we? And this week's parashah is Korah. The rebellion continues with mutiny against Moshe's leadership by a man named Korach. And what actually means, his name actually means boldness, or baldness. We won't put that on Shimshon or ice.
Wholesome bears.
Yeah, or frost. Korah had a grudge against Moshe and Aaron. Did it happen overnight? Probably not. But it did happen.
Yeah.
Probably resulting from, if you didn't, it was just a bit of a pun on shampoo lady. Rachel Hunter. If you don't know who she is, look her up. Probably on there somewhere. Probably resulted from weeks, if not months, of stewing on, or his frustration with the lot he'd been handed. Like Moshe and Aaron, Korach was a Levite. He resented Moshe for appointing Aaron and his sons to the priesthood and making the rest of the Levites their servants. He felt that Moshe was abusing his position of leadership and indulging in nepotism by favoring his brother Aaron. No one likes nepotism, do they? Do you like that word, nepotism? It means putting your own family or own friends in a position or in a job ahead of someone else who may be better. But most people kind of like to have these days with democracy, everyone likes to think that they can have a fair hand at getting promotion or doing things. But God's way isn't necessarily that way. Because he sees the future, he actually sees the bigger picture. Most of us can't, of course. I suppose that's why you don't make many decisions within Urim and Thummim these days. Or, if you had good faith or trust, you could toss a coin on your decisions. Is that a good way to make decisions? It could be. It could be drawing straws. That's how they decided on the replacement disciples of Yeshua. Casting lots. Drawing straws. Can you have faith? Can you have trust? If that's done in the right place, in the right manner. He felt that Moshe was, as I explained, was producing position. Korah insisted that all Levites should enjoy the privileges and rewards of the priesthood. And the entire assembly of Israel was holy enough to serve in the tabernacle. Everyone was holy enough. That's what he thought. And Korach's attitude seems common, almost prevalent amongst many believers today who feel that they are only accountable only to God, not to anybody else. Many believers view pastoral authorities with suspicion and distrust and refuse to submit themselves to congregational leaders. There may be some justification for their position. We have experienced leaders who want to control people rather than them understand that actually they aren't theirs. They're God's, who has given them the privileged responsibility of nurturing and caring for people, developing and releasing them. Hence, it's sad when the situations get to seemingly intolerable states. But there is still a right and there's a wrong way to deal with and resolve all situations. Because God hates strife. He hates discord, hates division between brothers, and calling the one who sows them an abomination. It says these 6 things the Lord hates, yes, 7, are an abomination to him. One who sows discord amongst brethren. That's Proverbs 6. That's why I so appreciate this congregation, each part of the family. Because, well, you're just not like that. It is really appreciated. We trust each other. And that's what family really should be about. You know? It is trusting each other. And if you have an issue, you have a problem, go and talk to the person. Go and talk to the people. And we should listen. Not just switch our ears or hear what we want to hear. But listen to what each one says. And be open to correction. Open direction. That's all of us. Himself, everyone. That's what it's about. Body ministry, working together. Recognizing that we have different positions that God's placed us in, and work together, not lording it over one another, loving one another, strengthening one another. The real issue was that Moshe hadn't set himself as leader and Aaron as priest, but God actually did that. And Korach's discontent, his argument, wasn't with Moshe, it was with God. Now remember that Korach came by his hot-headedness, honestly, coming down the line of his forefather Levi. Do you recall his actions with Simeon at Shechem in revenge for the disgraced Dinah, their sister? Remember that one? Yeah. No excuses. No excuses though. He shouldn't have done it. And if he hadn't, then he might have got a better position, a better role, and might have had a slightly different plan. But that's what happened. He ended up being servant of all their tribe, servant of all the other tribes. Instead of raising his issue privately or directly with God, Korach spread his spirit of dissent amongst his fellow tribesmen. And 250,000 of renown who followed Korach were also from the tribe of Levi. And Moshe warned them about taking up the census, but let them have their moment's glory, ending and be consumed by fire of God's wrath. However, Korach was joined by three unlikely nobles, Dathan, Abiram, and On, of the tribe of Reuben. They were the Reubenites. Why would the Reubenites join Korach and the Levites? What did the Levitical dispute have to do with them? Taking up other people's offences. Sometimes it's appropriate, but in this situation, it wasn't. Korach and the Reubenites, they were next door neighbours, and Korach was from the Levitical family of Korah. And according to the arrangements for the tribal encampments, the Korathites and the Reubenites, they both camped on the south side of the tabernacle. Next door neighbours' relationships, in other words, taking on other people's offences, led to the Reubenites into participating in the insurrection. Now, Korah's initial grievances against Moshe and Aaron had nothing to do with the Reubenites. But through frequent conversation and the subtle manipulation of ideas, Korach was able to draw his neighbours into his plan. Some people do that. Beware. Beware of those that speak softly and cunningly to draw you into their plan. Make sure it's not going to bite you. The proverb says, woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbour. This applies to Dathan and Abiram and the neighbours of Korah. And Dathan and Abiram were neighbours with a contentious man. Having sided with him, they were punished with him and were swept from the world. Wow, what an outcome. Ironically, those who refused to go up to negotiate peace with Moshe ended up going down to their death. It's interesting that Moshe spoke into being the fate that would happen. I've always wondered that there had to be more to the background of Korach and his insurrection, especially in the scripture that we don't know about. For example, what's the backstory to Korach's rebellion? What got him so worked up in the first place? Well, political coups don't just happen overnight. But in the Torah's telling of it, Korach seemed to come out of nowhere with a campaign slogan and a few hundred followers. What led him to do this? Well, there's some places that you can actually have a look, which can help. Here's another challenging question. Remember what happened at the end of Korach's story? He and his followers, they got swallowed up alive by the earth. Well, what was that all about? Why was it Korach's punishment? Was it just a random method of execution? Or was there something about Korach's death that was directly linked to his crime? So you've got some sleuths coming on, like sleuthing. I think that there's more to the eye, the story that meets the eye. And I think that the Torah actually provides a key. Only it's not here in the parasha. It's a few chapters back in what I believe is a hidden biography of Korah. A text that gives us insight into the roots of Korach's rebellion. And it can give the explanation as to the bizarre death that occurred. Swallowing up wasn't God's normal means or method of punishment, and certainly nothing in the Torah is compared with this. Why did he deserve it? Well, in Bamidbar, Numbers 3 and 4, we read all about the Kohath family and their role in the Mishkan. That's the tabernacle. They carried out the vessels for the Mishkan from place to place. And they weren't allowed to touch or look at them without them being wrapped in blue cloth. And Aaron and his sons and the kids, the cousins, they got to take down the curtains and to wrap the vessels. What a lovely job. Well, the Kehat's just had to carry them to ensure that none of them died, and the Kohanim gave very specific instructions. And effectively, the Kehat would have felt micromanaged. We talked about that the other week, didn't we? How would you feel if your cousins got to experience the honor of the Holy of Holies, but couldn't even look at it? So you can see how you may have got fed up. But interestingly, he wasn't doing it for himself, as he stated. He said, we're holy, everyone in the nation's holy. And he wasn't saying that I want to be number one. Well, he probably was, but he definitely didn't say that. He was saying no one should be number one. We're all equal in God's eyes. In other words, down with hierarchy, down with. He was trying to dismantle the structure of leadership. This always sounds the ideal, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound ideal to you? Everyone's on the same total. But is it God's way? There's also the unusual death of being swallowed alive. There was something else that was swallowed. We know that all the vessels carried out by Kohath had to be covered, kavela. But the literal meaning of the word actually means to swallow. If we kept wrapping it around, putting a cloth, the word actually means to swallow. So we've got these two stories both about someone from Kohath, both about swallowing, and both about death. Are they linked? One is about vessels and the other is about rebels. But what's being swallowed in the Mishkan? It's the Qodesh, the holy vessels. And who gets swallowed by the earth? Korah and his followers, who claim to be Qodesh and holy. Also, it's not the first time that we hear these words of Qodesh B'Tocham, that God used it in his command to make a holy place for me so I can dwell amongst you. Well, Korah was effectively turning God's words on its head. So the spoken words were good, but he was using it for his own benefit and turning it upside down. Who else said something about that? Yeshua, talking to the Pharisees, isn't he? He said, you've taken what's from the Torah and you've turned it upside down. No, just stick with it and don't add anything to it, and then you'll be okay. But we always kind of tend to like to twist things a bit, don't we? When we read things, oh, that's to our benefit. Oh, I'll use that. And that's okay, as long as it's for that purpose. You know? But many often we want to use it slightly for a slightly different purpose, so we'll stretch it a bit. Stretch it a bit. Korach was effectively turning God's words on their head and saying, forget the Mishkan, the Qodesh is here, the Qodesh is us. This is where God dwells now. Now note that God then told everyone to get away from the Mishkan of Korah. And effectively was saying, you think you're holy? You want to be the Qodesh? Well, you know what happens to the Qodesh? It gets swallowed. So in the sense, God gave Korach exactly what he asked for. Exactly what he deserved. And I'm sure most of us don't want to get what we deserve. That's why Yeshua came. To cover us so we didn't get what we deserved. He cleansed us, made us whole, gave us life. As indicated earlier, they weren't so much challenging Moshe, rather than challenging God and questioning his fairness. And they should have had the discussion with God first.
Yeah.
Isn't that a good way to do it? You come up with some bright ideas, have a chat with God first. Make sure it fits into his ideas and concept and his plans. Well, just as Job, and that was something just as Job did. At times, we're quick to pick a fight with God's spoken person rather than going directly to the source and speaking to him about our situation. This can happen in our marriages. That's a subject for another day, of course, because that would occupy most of it. So equally for many of us, we may have at times think, why God have you struck me in this lot? Why have you given me this lot of life? As those around us seem to always have things much better. Well, it's because we don't see the whole picture. And it's often hard to see at the time as well. There are times some things that have been specifically tasked to us to do, and only you can accomplish it. That is part of understanding our own value and our own worth and who God has made us to be in his body of believers. Our strife and questioning God's appointed leadership did not end with this incident in the wilderness. In the promised land, God gave the Israelites judges and prophets, but they continuously rebelled against them. What happened? Says we find that God answered the Israelites' request for a king, which is not what he had intended. They got Shaul. And yet the people questioned Shaul's fitness for the job. Man, it goes on and on, doesn't it? And it was never intended. It was always intended that the king that they would have would be the Mashiach when he arrived. But they couldn't wait. And it really mucked them up for many a century. They ended up, it's kind of why the rebellion of those kings is why they ended up in exile.
Yeah.
Not so much the response from the people, it was because they were lousy kings. They were shocking kings who did their own thing. They always wanted to pick a fight with someone. So as a result, all the people suffered. They may never have ended up and highly likely they would never have ended up in exile. It's good if they didn't have kings. They'd followed and made sure that they always just had a spiritual leader. Well, that didn't happen. This is God's plan, of course. They even argued with Samuel. Says, did God and Shemuel get it wrong in the instance of Shaul? Samuel defended his authority, saying, here I stand. Testify against me in the presence of Adonai and his anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Whose donkey have I taken? Whom have I cheated? Who have I oppressed? From whose hand have I accepted a bribe to make me shut my eyes? So, likewise, Moshe defended his conduct as an honorable leader, saying that God, in the presence of his accusers, I have not taken so much as a donkey from them, nor have I wronged any of them. So what's your problem? Contention is contagious, and contentious people work hard to convince their companions to join their cause. Just go and become an MP and find out. Remember, we read in 2 Timothy 2, 14 to 18. And some time ago at Aspen Retirement Home, I was sharing some of my thoughts on grumbling with residents. I asked how many had experienced the ground opening up. I know some have experienced earthquakes, but not too many have died in those quakes. It must have been a really unreal, horrendous sight to behold. Sharon and I was just talking about this morning. You know, that swallowing up. It must have been just unbelievable to think about. Just to see people just all of a sudden, whoom, disappear. Man, you think, are we next? No trace of them. The picture's like a sci-fi movie. There are a few movies around about it as well, where the ground opens up, swallows people. Well, these people, they had experienced the Egyptian army being swallowed up, and now it was their turn. They didn't stop because they didn't stop here, because they ended up having a plague, which actually killed another 14,700. You would have thought that after the ground swallowed up, the fear would have been enough to make sure, I better keep my lips zipped up and keep my mouth shut. But man, it wasn't too long after that, 14,700 were killed by a plague. Of course, sometimes we don't equate these two things, because one was the swallow up and the other was a plague. But we forget that it's all because of sin, all because of behaviour. These things occurred at the time. It's interesting, that's actually only 0.7% of the population. Well, actually, that's quite high. 0.7% of the population of the time actually died of the plague. And it only stopped by Moshe pleading for them before God. And Moshe was the abused one. Wow, what a fellow. Stood up on everyone else's behalf. He was the one being abused. That's humility. How bizarre that many still failed to understand the consequences of grumbling, as the fate of 1 million had already been set and losing out on entering the promised land. So why add to the number? We're talking about plagues. COVID has so far claimed only approximately 0.07% of the world's population. So in this particular case, it's just in comparison, 0.7% were killed because of the thing. And currently 0.07 of the world's population. And that's terrible as it is. And it's continue to pray for those that friends in India and Nepal who are having a difficult time because of it. Pray healing, strength on them. There's just a comparison that how actually God saw the grumbling. It was a serious matter. Well, today the Jewish people still struggle with strife and division, even though they've just had an election. We have to wait and see what happens there. In Israel, animosity and contention, they rise up between various movements, even in Judaism, between everyone. And all this discord and friction, despite being a people who share a common history and heritage and who claim they all worship the same God. Contention. The truth of the matter is that Moshe did not exalt himself. It is God who raised him up to lead the people out of Egypt. It wasn't his desire to be the leader, rather he was the leader that was obedient to God. And it's important that each of us walk in humility. Walking in humility is being willing to walk in obedience to our calling, whether God is requiring us to wash dishes or to serve in a position of leadership, or to wash dishes while in the position of leadership. Okay? It's all the same. Nothing's too high or too low, because we do it for each other and with each other. It also means allowing God to exalt us in his perfect way and in his time, without jealousy or with discontent. And that's 1 Peter 5 verse 6 talks about that. As disciples of Yeshua, we need to be wary not to fall into the trap of sedition. Shaul warns us not to even listen to accusations except on the basis of 2 or 3 witnesses. It's 1 Timothy. And Peter tells the younger men, congregations, be subject to your elders. The writer of the book of Hebrews says, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls as those who will give account. So if you look forward to be leaders, well, then you have to be responsible and take account, and you'll be held to account, even more so. So, something to think about if you aspire to leadership. So let them do this with joy, not with grief, for this would be unprofitable for you. So now it's important to balance this using our God-given wisdom, and the Ruach is to discern. The spiritual person judges all things, but is himself to be judged by no one. That's 1 Corinthians 2:15. It says, watch out for false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them for their fruit. It says, but the fruit of the Ruach is what? Yeah, that's pretty good. Well done. And what's the last one, as you said? Yeah, I always wondered why it was put the last. It's probably the hardest.
The greatest is still love. The greatest is still love, but last is maturity.
And that's why love is at the top. And self-control is at the bottom. Yeah. Anyone who leads must live by that. And if they do not, and if they do, then they won't abuse their position, but rather protect and release those under their protection. That's why sometimes it's okay and wise to just walk away. Throw about 30 seconds at it. However, if it becomes a regular occurrence, then you may want to reflect on where the issue really lies. But a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. We must make a concerted effort to walk in holiness and unity, because that is where the anointing is. And may we all learn to walk in greater humility, contentment, and gentleness towards each other and others. May God bring unity and peace between brothers and sisters, as it's written. B'nai matov u'manaim shevetachim gam yachad. Behold, how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. Let's say that once more. Behold, how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. And that's basically the crux of the parasha. He does. And there he commands the blessing. Shabbat shalom.
Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasim lechem shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. And thus you are to bless the children of Israel. Have a blessed and good week.
Yes, this little one.